make you think, music that moves you. It could only be one place. Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Welcome to The Actor's Choice, where the actors and actresses have a chance to talk about themselves and their careers. Join us now for the next hour as we explore the marvelous industry of acting by actors and actresses from today's exciting show business world. And now, direct from Hollywood, here's your host, Ron Brewington.
Hi everybody, I'm Ron Brewington and welcome to The Actor's Choice. My guest today is considered one of America's greatest filmmakers. He's also a director, writer, producer, and editor. Born in Mississippi and raised in Watts, he dramatized African-American life in his first feature, 1977's Killer of Sheep. He went on to make dramatic films such as To Sleep with Anger, My Brother's Wedding, and The Glass Shield. He also gave us documentaries like America Becoming and Nat Turner, A Troublesome Property. He's also a legendary figure in the indie film community. This past November the 11th, he was honored by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences as he received an honorary Oscar. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Charles Burnett. Charles, thank you very, very much, sir. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow, and congratulations on what you received. Did you ever think you'd ever get such an award like that?
No. Well, because I started off as an independent, and the subject matter was far from what Hollywood would accept as entertainment, as such. They were like personal films, and also the fact that when I was starting off making films, they didn't include us. There was few directors, maybe for about 3 or 4, and if you didn't have any relatives in Hollywood, you weren't in.
Right.
So I never dreamed I'd be in a position where I would be considered.
Well, you started all off, as we said, in Mississippi, and then in the young age, about 2 years old,
Mm-hmm.
you came up here to Los Angeles, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you?
Well, I was too small to understand what was going on, but we moved to South Los Angeles, and everyone who lived in my neighborhood was from Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas. Just generally, the South just moved with us in a sense. So there wasn't any difference except that we didn't have the kind of mosquitoes they had in the South, or we picked cotton. But
Yes.
if you wanted to pick cotton, you go up to Bakersfield, something like that. So
I see.
it was a big difference.
Okay. Now on Saturday, Mama would let you go to the movies, didn't she?
Well, but first I had to go to church.
Oh yeah, that comes first.
If I didn't go to church, I couldn't go to the movies. It's one of those kind of things where if you can do this, you have to do that. But it was a great time. Los Angeles was sort of undeveloped. It wasn't like it is now. You can still go further south, between LA and Gardena, something like that. There was all these open fields, so you can, that's swamps and things like that, but not real major swamps like here in the South and places like that. But they have places where water stayed, and you can go and pretend like you were in some tropical place or jungle, whatever it was, and play and have a great time,
Wow. As we were talking in the green room, we were talking about the fact that on going to the movies on a Saturday, that was a great thing for us as children. We could stay all day long.
Oh yeah. Like we were talking, it was only a dime or a quarter, and so you can see 2 features, a documentary, whatever, a cartoon, and stay there as long as you want. It was fun. It was a great time to be in LA.
When did you get your calling to say, this is what I want to do? I want to be in this industry.
Oh, it wasn't until I was in college, actually, that I thought about becoming a filmmaker, because I had majored in electronics. And I thought I was going to be an engineer or something like that, electronic engineer. But I did have an idea, of sort of vague notion of wanting to be behind the camera. And I don't know how that came about. I was like in junior high school, and for some strange reason, I wanted to shoot a film. I'm not a film, but shoot a camera. A motion picture camera, like a regular 8 camera or something like that. a couple of years later, when I was in high school, I was working with a friend of mine who we were working at a car wash, in Inglewood, and he had a regular 8 camera, and where I lived and where the car wash was, it was right under the landing path of LAX, and so he had his camera, and so he let me, shoot an airplane going over, or film an airplane going over, and that was my first time looking through a moving picture camera, still cameras I did, and so it wasn't until I got to UCLA that I really, looked in the camera and made a film,
Yeah.
And so, it was one of the reasons why I sort of got this inkling beyond, the time I was at junior high school, was I worked downtown in the library, so I used to go to the theaters, and so when I got out of school, I was going to junior college. When I got out of school, and the library, the main branch was downtown, so I would, catch the bus from LACC and come into town, and it's downtown, and I had all this time, so I spent a lot of it at the Los Angeles Theater, and watched all these films while I was waiting to go to work, and then I started getting interested in, the process of filmmaking, particularly camera, and I was majoring in electronics, and I got sort of bored with that, and because there was nothing after, when you specialize in electronics, it becomes, uneventful, unimaginative, you choose a field you want to go into, and you stay there and become an expert. But anyway, so I decided, no, this is the one I want to do, and I'd taken this really wonderful writing class by this lady by the name of Isabel Ziegler. And not everyone, but a number of people sort of audit the class because she was so popular. And it was from there that I got this idea. I got the interest in writing and telling stories.
Because that's what it is. You're a storyteller.
Well,
Yeah. So your early days of writing, what subjects did you pick back in those days?
Oh, I was just learning, just getting interested in it. But I knew that there's something, the way she taught it, it was like she created this sort of magic about writing and about storytelling, and I wanted to recreate that. I wanted to tell stories about the people I knew, the stories I heard from my family and mothers and uncles and all this kind of stuff, and how they excited me when they told, stories about being in the South and so forth. So it was that I wanted to capture, this world that was gone,
Yes.
and the people they talked about. And so that was the kind of things I wanted to do.
Now, time frame, we're looking at what, in the early 60s? We're looking at that time frame?
It was like, in the 60s I was in high school,
Okay.
and it was like, before then it was like in the 50s, and
Okay.
it was a lot of influence, a lot of things that sort of impacted me. Like the civil rights movement was there. You had all these other social issues that were going on and protests. There were a lot of things that sort of made you want to do something, be a part of something. And there was this notion that you're either part of the problem or part of the solution.
Yes.
And so all of us, for some reason, even though we were kids, we were young people, we thought that we were part of the solution, and that somehow or another you had this illusion that you had to speak for the black people, and that idea, which I soon got over, because you only speak for yourself, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
And so, there were all these influences going on at the time, that made you, you had, like I said, you had the civil rights movement, you had Martin Luther King, you had Malcolm X, you had the Panthers, and us, and all these groups that were sort of guiding you or pulling you this way or that way.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole idea is that, I mean, the whole thing was that there were events happening that you had to either be a part of or reject, you know, because it was all about choosing sides, you know, to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great time, I must say.
Yes.
To be an activist.
Okay. How about the support you were getting from your family and friends in what you were trying to do?
Well, that's interesting because I knew that wanting to be a filmmaker was sort of a foreign idea with the people in my neighborhood, in particular my family. So I never told anyone what I was doing, wanted to do, what I was interested in. Electronics, they can understand because there was obviously, you know, they can see the benefit of wanting to, you know, be in that field, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or something like that. It made more sense as opposed to a filmmaker. You said, what is that about? You know, what black person is a filmmaker? You know, and so I didn't necessarily keep it a secret, but I didn't go out and brag about it, tell him I'm going to be a filmmaker, because I didn't want all the stares. Even though I shot film in the community, and when I was at UCLA particularly, I wanted to demystify filmmaking, to include, when I shot film there, I wanted to include the people in my neighborhood as be a part of the process, to show that it's not a difficult thing. I mean, it's something that you can do. If you can turn on a hi-fi, you can do sound, record, whatever it is. And a lot of the kids worked on Killer Sheep, worked behind the camera, not only acted, but they also worked behind the camera. They helped load, not necessarily load the camera, but they helped to set up the lights and all sorts of things. You know.
I see.
Yeah.
So you got a master in film and fine arts from UCLA, and then you moved on to the industry itself.
No, it took a while. I spent an undergraduate and graduate study at UCLA, and then when I made Killer Sheep, it was like there was no place to show it, basically, you know, and it wasn't really meant to be shown theatrically, because they didn't have, like events like FilmX. Oh, well, they did have FilmX, but they didn't have like Sundance and places like that, and a lot of other film festivals. So they didn't have the distribution outlets that they have now for it, where people can take their independent films and get them screened. And because now you can probably get, if you make a film, you can probably get it screened at a theater. But when we were making films in the 60s, or trying to make films in the 60s and early 70s, you couldn't get your film shown unless it had a union seal.
Right.
And so you were prohibited from, having that opportunity. And so a lot of things we just done. We wanted to make films as a hobby and show it in the community, talk about, how you can make a difference and improve conditions.
Okay. In those early days, who was your mentors? Some of your film director mentors.
Well, we looked at Oscar Micheaux and people like that, and Spencer Williams and Clarence Muse, but I think it was mainly Oscar Micheaux, because it was a friend of, was a person by the name of Willie Bell, who grew up in New York and the South. I think he's in the South and moved to New York. And he had the opportunity of seeing a lot of these old black films in the theaters, And then when we were at UCLA, he was the one that sort of brought them to made us aware of them. And so we had like a film festival of Oscar Micheaux's films of black filmmakers and things like that, which is really important. I think that was, the first step in identifying people that you really, really wanted to, that sort of encouraged you. Because these guys were making films when it was impossible, and then when Third World Cinema came about, that was a big factor in determining what direction we wanted to go in.
Okay. Jamal Fanaka. That name sounds familiar.
Of course, we went to school together, and he was one of the students there when I was there. And he was a very prolific person in the sense that he had, usually when film students come, they kind of like you have to. Well, this is what you should do. This is what you should do. This, and you can make a film, and it's not difficult. Jamal stepped off the, almost like off the bus, with a armful of scripts, you know, knowing that he wanted to do features.
Yes.
You know, and he did, you know. Excuse me. And you know, he wasn't intimidated by the process.
Right.
You know, he made films that were really relevant. You know, like MMA, I think, is one of his.
Yes, Penitentiary.
Yeah, Penitentiary.
Yeah.
But MMA, I think, to me, is probably one of his best films.
Yes, indeed.
You know, and so he was. And there was people like Chuck McNeil. You know, also Haile Greenman was there. Ben
Yes.
Caldwell.
Ben Caldwell.
You know,
Yes.
Julie Dash. There were a lot of, and like there was Sharon Larkin, Adele Larkin. There was a bunch of people there. That, in fact, what it was since there was so few of us, we sort of banded together, you know, and we would spend, you know, nights, long nights, way into the hours in the morning, discussing film passionately, arguing about film, you know, almost getting into the fights about what we should be doing. So it was a good time and a very important time for us to grow.
Right. In '69, you did Several Friends, and in '73, you did The Horse. But in 1977, you released Killer of Sheep. Can you tell us about that movie, sir?
Yeah, it's a movie that it was about, you know, some of the kids I grew up with, and what they were doing, and talked about, you know, the social condition that impacted their lives and why they were trapped in this situation, you know, I wanted to do a film that told a story, but not in terms of like Hollywood, you know, with how, you know, the sort of situation where it's plotted and if they do ABC, then the result would be such and such, you know. I wanted to do a film where it reflected the kind of situation you see in the black community, the kind of life people would live. You know, there was success, but it wasn't really what you imagined. It was that I admire people that sort of worked and continued to work in spite of everything, and support their families, you know. And whatever happened, that they endured. They tried the best they could, but the main thing was that you couldn't ask for more than the person trying to be responsible for his family growing up and teaching them something. And that it's not enough, but if you do that, at least that, then you did your job.
Then you did your job,
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that I understand that years later, that movie, Killer of Sheep, was declared, quote, a national treasure by the Library of Congress. And it's also among the first 50 films placed in the National Film Registry because of its significance. Man, you touched it. You just touched that film. That was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I was quite surprised, you know.
Got you. At that point in your career, how many films were you putting out?
You don't really put out too many when you're in my situation, like most independent filmmakers, because at that time, it was sort of considered, if you were an independent filmmaker, if you did a film every 5 to 10 years, you were lucky. You know, it was just a difficult, and it took you a long time to raise the funds, particularly if you're out of school, you know, where you don't have the access to equipment and all that sort of editing equipment as well. But you know, to do a film costs, an independent film, can cost, you know, anywhere from a couple of bucks, a couple of $100,000.
Wow.
You know, and living in South Central, you don't have that kind of money at this. You know, it has to be more than a hobby. You know, you have to make a living from it, and the other part, making the film with that kind of money, but not getting any return. You know, making a profit from it, it's where you could go on to make other films. Just it's like it's you know, a built-in disaster situation. You know, you have to have some means of distributed films for you to, you know, to do it quite often, to what it pay for itself. Otherwise, you just keep putting money into something that you're losing battle.
Okay. Where did you get your ideas from for a lot of these movies?
I got my ideas from the people I lived with in the community, what I saw, and what I thought was needed to sort of, one of the things we wanted to do was to show that we were, people, and we had a voice, we had stories to tell, and they were important stories. And so it came from a need from wanting to represent us in a just and fair way, because our narratives were always interpreted or generated by someone who doesn't live in the community, who didn't live in the community, and never have any sensibilities about who we are and could be. It was always based on stereotypes, because if you notice it, even today, LA is still very segregated.
Yes, it is.
And so we don't get a chance to tell our stories. And so the idea and the need was to find proper representation, and the only way we can do it is through art, participation. So that was the main thing. Is we fought against not only the images Hollywood produced. Since the birth of a nation, it's always been a distortion of who we are.
Yes.
To even today, So we sort of had a purpose, what we needed and what we. And it wasn't about making money. At least most of us who got into this business, it wasn't about making money.
Right.
That was something that was, if it happened, fine. If it didn't, that was something off in the distance.
Gotcha. What was your responsibility on you as a director as you sat in that chair?
You come to realize that you're responsible for hundreds of people, the actors, which can range from, God knows, from one to hundreds of people. You have extras, one of these epic stories where you have tons of people out there. You have the people that work with you on the crew. You have the financial responsibility of handling anywhere from a couple of dollars to millions of dollars. Because a film nowadays, can cost you. There's no limit to what a film can cost you. You hear these quotes like, "Oh, this film costs $200 million," or some ridiculous sum like that, or some variation of that amount. But generally speaking, like a low-budget film in the studios would be like anywhere from $25, $50 million. That's considered low budget, And so that's a lot of money to be responsible for.
I see.
Or any kind, anything over, a couple of $100,000 is a lot to me.
Right.
And for a lot of people where I live, it's like unbelievable. So you're responsible for that. You're responsible for the quality of the film. You're responsible to some extent if the film is going to make money. I look at the film. There's all these things you're responsible for, but you shouldn't think about all those things when you're directing. You should be thinking about one thing,
And that is?
Directing and getting a good project, getting the story told in a good way. Otherwise, you'll be a nervous wreck.
I love when y'all say action.
No, the best part is when you say cut. Or the best part is that's a wrap. We can go home and yeah.
As a director, you have to work with different people. Would you say being a good listener would help a lot?
It's part of the, I suppose, of you being a good director. You mentioned in the documentary I did, American Becoming, I was working with Daciel Kim Gibson. She was one of the producers of the show and co-directing it. We were shooting this film in Texas or Kansas, and we were interviewing these people who were working at this meat packing place, Vietnamese. And so I wanted to this particular this Vietnamese person, who wasn't an actor but a real person, we were trying to get some B-roll, and I was trying to get him to. I was asking him to do something, so we could make a smooth cut, and show what he does, and while he's narrating a scene, whatever it is.
Okay.
So anyway, so I asked him, well, what I'd like for you to do is come out of the house and we see you in the gardening.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of looked at me and he said, I'll do it. He said, but being a Vietnamese man, I wouldn't do that. That would be my wife.
Oh, really?
Doing that.
That's different cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, well, don't do it then. You do what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise it wouldn't have been authentic.
Yes.
And what the other thing was, when I was in Africa and I was in Namibia, and I wanted to show, well, the scene is based on a true story, and this the guy's aunt died, and it was a young guy who had moved to another part of Namibia, and he was staying with his aunt, and his aunt died. So he comes home from work, and in America and Western sort of culture, you jump to the chase, because when it costs money to linger on the scene, whatever it is. So if a person dies, you get to the chase. You say, well, you your aunt died. Walked in, and moment he steps in the door, he says, George, I got something to tell you. I said, your aunt died.
Oh.
Okay. But there, they don't do it like that. So in the script, it was, he comes in and he does some business, and then his uncle says, your aunt died today. And so we were going to do that, and the Namibians said, no, we wouldn't do it like that. He said, when something like that would happen, we would start by telling a story about her, saying, oh,
Okay.
Betsy, this wonderful person, she was best cook and this, and she had this and that. We did this together, we did that. And it would go on and on and on. And then at a certain point, something like several minutes or more later, he would say, your aunt died.
Okay.
And I, as being, a Westerner and thinking about money as you're shooting this stuff all the time, you would say, can you just say when he walks in that your aunt died, and to save us all this film and footage, and cutting the same way. And he said, no, that we wouldn't do it that way. So you have to do it their way, because you're making a film about
Their country.
the Namibians
Yes.
and these characters. You don't want to make it a Western film. So
Got you.
that's what you do.
Right. Okay. In 1983, you did My Brother's Wedding. Can you tell us about that movie?
Yeah, I can tell you about My Brother's Wedding. I got financing from German TV,
Okay.
ZDF, when I was over in Germany, in Berlin, showing Killer Sheep. It won an award, and from there, some producers at ZDF said, we'll be interested in your next film. The financing, sure, go right ahead. And then, but what happened was, I was working at this agency, at the time, and this young lady had came to, she'd come to LA, she only been in a short time, we made friends, and she was gonna get married. And so she invited me, she didn't have very many friends here because she just got here, so she invited me to her wedding. I said, okay, I'll be there. At the same time, sometime later, a friend of mine was killed.
Okay.
And so what happened eventually was the wedding and the funeral was going to be the same day, almost the same time. And I decided, well, I would go to the funeral because it seemed more important. And so I was going to tell this lady that, I'm sorry I can't come to your wedding because this and this happened. But when I was walking up to her, I guess I had this look on my face because she said, you're not going to tell me you're not coming to the wedding. And I was too of a coward to say, no, I'll be there. And so I tried to do both.
Yeah.
And I messed up, and the wedding always goes later. I was being late. So I was at the wedding because I thought that would be, I'd get done with that and rush to the funeral. But the wedding went on and on and on because it was late to getting started. And then the funeral was going, and I just was so disappointed and saddened by it. So I put that in a plot, in a story. That's the only thing that's sort of biographical in My Brother's Wedding.
I see.
And so it's about having responsibility and what it takes to. You can avoid tragedy by just having the courage to say no sometimes, you know, and doing the right thing.
That wasn't your actual brother, was it?
No.
Okay, just the title.
Joe, yeah, just a title. No, the brother was my brother's. His brother and the character in the story, his brother, is getting married.
Okay.
But they come from a poor family, sort of moderately poor, not poor, but you know, working class. But he's married. He jumped up in class. He's marrying this middle class girl, lady, I should say, and the main character has these stereotypes about you know people with money. So he looks for all the wrong reasons for these stereotypes of people, you know, misinformed perceptions of people, and so he doesn't like her because she's middle class, you know, and then she exaggerates because he knows that he has this attitude, and so she makes it, you know, she dramatizes even more her class differences, and so anyway, and this guy's best friend gets out of jail, and he's supposed to promise his mother, his best friend's mother, that he would be a good influence, like a brother's keeper and stuff like that. And he's too immature to do that. He's a good person, but you know, it takes responsibility for anything you take on. And so he's the wrong guy, even though he's good at heart to be a controlling factor. And this guy, his name is Soldier in the kid's story, to be responsible for him. And so anyway, so it's all about misconceptions, responsibility, and you know, these strange notions you grew up when you were kids and stuff like that.
Okay. In 1990, Charles, you wrote and directed To Sleep with Anger. We have a little short clip on that. Can we run that for just a moment?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Critics took their hats off to SVS in '91 with the release of its most acclaimed feature to date, To Sleep with Anger, hailed as one of the year's top 10 films.
Hi, I'm Danny Glover. I've recently had the opportunity to be in a very special motion picture called To Sleep with Anger. It's the first major film written and directed by noted filmmaker Charles Burnett.
I said that if Harry sets foot in this house one more time, that I'm taking Sonny and leaving. And just as I said that, who do you think is coming up the steps? Harry.
That real corn liquor? It ain't your dog.
Harry, you know, you remind me of so much that went wrong in my life.
To Sleep with Anger.
Brings back a few memories, huh? Yeah, Shirley Ralph. God, I remember back in the day. Yes. And then in 1994, you gave us The Glass Shield. That was a good one. In fact, we even have a short clip on that one. Okay.
Partner, I have a gun. Keep your hands where I can see him.
He was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
They have a witness, a gun, and your funky attitude.
How do you plead?
Man, I didn't do it.
Now, the only one who can save his life
Serial number on the gun I picked up with Teddy Woods has been changed.
is a cop who must risk his own in a world filled with violence.
Don't go looking into a loaded gun.
There is a possibility that someone in the sheriff's department is involved in all this.
Their only weapon is the truth. Ice Cube, Lori Petty, Michael Volkman star in the movie critics are calling a no-holds-barred thriller.
Have you lied to this jury?
I don't want this ship to sink.
Heart-stopping suspense.
I didn't kill nobody. Freeze! I didn't rob nobody. I never even used a gun.
Okay, the glass ship. That's Ice Cube, a young-looking Ice Cube
Yeah,
there.
Ice Cube. He has a very small role in it. Very small.
Yeah, just a small role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then in 1995, you did 2 movies. You did When It Rains and Nightjohn. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I did. When It Rains came after doing this film here, Glass Ship, because you doing a film with someone else's money and producers and things like that, it's really restrictive in a way, and you don't have the sense of freedom or that you do when you do your own film. And so immediately after I finished this film, for therapeutic reasons, I did a little short film called When It Rains. And I just got some friends of mine in the neighborhood, and Babu was in it, Babu's in it, and he's one of the main, he's one of the main characters.
Yes.
And we just went out for 2 days and shot this thing in the neighborhood, and it turned out pretty good. And you feel very, very satisfied in doing your own work and doing whatever you want, basically. And so it was probably, in terms of experience, one of the better ones in working films.
When you say in the neighborhood, do you remember Ian Fox? That name sound familiar? Ian
Yeah.
Fox? Yeah. He's still around, still doing his thing. Good brother, good brother. In 1998, you had your first TV movie, The Wedding, Halle Berry, Lynn Whitfield. Good movie. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it was an Oprah production, Oprah Winfrey, Harpo production.
Oh, Harpo Productions,
Yeah.
okay.
And we had a cast, a really good bunch of people in it. Good crew members. It was we shot in Wilmington.
Okay.
And Carolina. You get the Carolinas and mixed up.
Yes,
South
yes,
Carolina,
South
North Carolina.
Carolina,
It was one of those Carolinas. Anyway, it's awful. I don't know my geography. Yeah, it was a ABC movie of the week kind of thing in 2 parts, a miniseries, you can say.
Okay.
But it was we had I mentioned a good cast of people.
Yeah. Halle Berry.
Halle Berry, Mike Warren, Carl Lumley again, Eric Thor, and Miriam Jean Baptiste. Just a delightful bunch of people to work with.
Right. Made your job much easier.
Yeah, it did. When you're working with good actors, because this show is about actors too, as well. Yeah, and when they're doing their job and working with you, and there are no egos or anything like that, and everyone comes with ideas. We can sit down and talk about it. It's really nice.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
Okay. Charles, in 2000, you did another TV movie, Finding Buck McHenry, with Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis. Oh, what a couple.
Oh, they were just pleasant to work with. They've been around a very long time and didn't give you any hassle. They came with ideas. And one of the things that you had to admire about them, their professional attitude. And I say that because we were out in Canada, and we it was pretty late when we got there. It was the end of summer, fall was coming in, and it was really beautiful because the leaves were turning.
Okay.
And I never been in a situation like that where the leaves were just gorgeous, the whole, colors and everything. Anyway, so it started getting frosty. It was supposed to be a baseball movie in the summertime, and so we got there late, and the weather caught us, and but we were shooting outside, and being a summer movie, you walk around and
short sleeve.
Shoot, yeah. Well, Ozzy walked around. We tried to tell him it's kind of chilly outside. You need to put a coat on, but his attitude was, I can't put a coat on because if I put a coat on, if I have to take it off, I'll start shivering.
Oh, okay.
And so it's best that I get used to the cold.
I see.
And but everyone was like walking around like this, and he was like with the shirt sleeves, and it was, when you talk, the frost would come out, And so what he did to prevent that is he would put ice cubes in his mouth before he did his lines.
Wow. And
so he had all these, things that made you shiver thinking about, ice cubes in his mouth and no coat. And we were just amazed at, the stamina and his dedication and willingness to put himself out like that, to do the right thing, And so we just were like in total awe, know.
We sure do miss Ossie Davis.
Oh, yeah.
We sure do.
His wife was excellent too.
Yes.
She was, always sweet and just really nice.
Yes. The year 2003, you did a team effort for a solid documentary called Nat Turner: A Troublesome Property. Ooh, the name alone is.
Yeah, it was troublesome in many ways.
Yes.
And I must give credit to Ken Greenberg, who's a historian and the head of the history department, the philosophy department at Suffolk, and Frank Christopher, who actually originated the idea.
Right.
And how we got started was I did Night John, and the story about a slave that ran away and came back to teach, and in it the girl reads this newspaper, and she reads a part where it deals with Nat Turner, and in our version, to make it a heroic thing, that she reads a piece that says Nat Turner was successful in his revolt, and it wasn't. Okay,
no,
so
it wasn't.
So Frank called me about this. Said, that piece you had in Night John was not accurate. I said, I know, but the writer wanted to be heroic. Okay. So he said, well, are you interested in doing a film on Turner, a documentary? I said, yeah. So we all got together, Ken, Frank, and myself. We got together, and plotted out the story. But it wasn't what you saw. It was an interesting concept we had that Frank wanted to do. What it was that we had went to Southampton, where the original place, I think it's called Cortland now, the revolt took place. We had talked about the descendants of the white family and Nat Turner, and they're all there, but they live in this tension because they still are suffering from the events of the past. They don't talk, and it's really strange. All these years, this took place in 1830, whatever, and to this day, it's still this hush-hush about it. So we had started talking to the people, and what we had in our mind was to do this truth and reconciliation thing, and we were going to have the families talk. Then we're going to bring them together slowly, and have this conference at a table, and they can talk about, what the events were, how it affects them now, and come to some sort of terms. And so we were interviewing these people, using the real locations and everything. But there was this writer who had got there before we did and had interviewed these people, and they told him things off the record, and he had promised he wouldn't publish anything that they didn't want to. But anyway, he turned around and did everything they didn't want. They published everything and embarrassed everyone in the community and everything. So after they read that, they said, no, you guys can't, no. And so we had to do something else quickly, and what it came out is that the only thing was left for us was do all these different interpretations of Nat Turner, like with Styron. The thing was that the NEH and the studios with the networks, PBS stations, were more interested in Styron than they were about the real Nat Turner. And so Styron was going to be a big factor in it. But there was all these other interpretations of Nat Turner. Harriet Beecher Stowe had written about a similar character that was, in essence, Nat Turner, and there were some other writers too that had written material about Nat Turner.
Yes.
And so anything that was written that was scholarly, that they could accept. There wasn't so much interested in word of mouth and things that were handed down, folklore and stuff like that. It had to be something that was written, and that was something that I personally didn't particularly have interest in doing, because I sort of felt that if it's a legend of folk handed down, oral history, that was just as important.
Yes, very important. Yes.
Yeah, so we struggled with that. We struggled with a lot of things that
Got
were.
A couple more questions. How many, to your knowledge, how many black, female, and male directors do we have in the industry today?
Obviously, a lot more than we did when I was coming up. Sure.
Obviously.
I mean, there were a lot of good people there. We mentioned Ava DuVernay and Julie Dash.
Yes.
And some.
Ava DuVernay, good friend.
Yeah, and she's really great. And a lot of, if you look around, but there were a lot of filmmakers like Kathy Collins I mentioned earlier who died quite young. Didn't get the opportunity, but made some really great films. I mean, people like that. There's these unsung people that are buried and need to be talked about.
Yes.
But they didn't have the opportunity that people now have. Now, I think because students go to school, in the film school, and they did when we were there, but it was virtually free when like I said, when I went to UCLA, it was only like $20
yeah,
a semester.
More now.
And so, yeah, a lot more. but then again, you could stay at school.
Right.
You can
do your own projects.
You could stay there. You could year after year without feeling the pinch of having someday in the future worried about student loans.
Yeah.
Now you can't do that. If you stay, you have to get in and out. Otherwise, you're going to be broke for the rest of your life paying these student loans. So now it's like almost necessary for students to look at Hollywood to try to get some job.
Yes.
Thing. But we didn't have to do that.
Right. What do you personally get out of this industry, being in this industry, making movies?
Well, when you have an opportunity to make them, and people get a chance to see them, that's and particularly if they like them, that's other better. And they find some meaning in them, that's even better.
Yes.
You know, I think that's the main thing. If someone can say, you know, I saw your movie and it changed my life, you know, that's a good compliment.
Yes.
That's a good, you know, and you know, it's not about, you know, how much it made it in the box office. That's kind of, it's relevant, but it's irrelevant for what I want to do, and a lot of the good filmmakers want to do. They want to look at it as an art form, as something that can be a means of social change, you know. And I mean, because I think now, because the way education is financed and treated, you know, there's nothing in place that would help someone or give them guidance, basically, to get to the next point. You know, and if it's a little thing like some film or clip or whatever is going to change somebody's life to put them on the right path, not to be presumptuous to think that you know something, but just you know, it can be a feeling you can convey.
Yes.
Anything that gets, you know, I see something, I see where I should be going or something. It could be a word of advice or something.
Right. Because a lot of movies today, sex and violence, you know, oh man.
Yeah,
so you see.
Yeah, you see, but someone did a survey and study about how much that you see on TV. The young kid, by the time a kid gets 18, how much violence and sex and murder he's seen. It was amazing. And you know, that, you know, creates a certain sensibility, a certain how you feel about another individual.
Gotcha.
You know.
What's your next project, feature film?
I'm trying to get a job, trying to get some money. I have to get something quickly. You know, you want to do something that's meaningful, at the same time that, you know, people can go see and want to go see.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm, you know, you're looking for.
Does the project have a name?
I mean, I have, you know, a bunch of scripts and things like that. We're trying to get off the ground. You know, we're trying to do one on Frederick Douglass, you know, W.E.B. Du Bois, and all those kinds of people like that. We're trying to get
great.
those. Yeah.
Good education. Yeah. A lot of folks don't know, who is that name. Now you can find out. Yeah.
Well, they certainly need to. I mean, it's because we live around. I live around the corner from Ida B. Wells' great granddaughter. Now they have a lot in Chicago.
Yes.
But here, I didn't realize that this lady that we were interviewing.
Yes.
Lived right around the corner. I didn't even know she lived right around the corner. I was right off of Slauson and Angeles Vista, right in that triangle thing. She lived there, and I didn't know it until we were going to do this film about her.
Wow. Charles, you've earned the distinction of being considered one of the best filmmakers in the world, sir. How do you keep that distinction?
Well, you try to keep making movies or something like that, you know, getting a job. But I mean, the idea is that's not necessarily the goal. The idea is to keep producing quality material.
Okay.
Yeah.
On November 11th of this year, you received your Oscar. We got a couple of pictures that we took of that were taken of you and you're standing up there with your. Look, there you are. Look at you stand up there. Can you tell us how you felt at that time? What was it like?
Well, and there's Ava DuVernay behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a good speaker, and I don't like speaking in public, so I was stressed all the way up until that moment. And then after I was I finished the speech, and I felt relieved.
Yes.
But I mean, it's a unique experience because you know, you don't get those opportunities, you know, and I was surprised at the size of that crowd that was there.
Yes.
And,
got a question for you. Where are you gonna put that Oscar at?
Well, you know, I think it's pretty heavy.
Yes, it is.
So you can't just put it on anything.
No.
On glass, like it is.
Break it.
Yeah. No, right now it's in a little cabinet, you know.
Okay.
And in the front. So.
Okay. Well, here's hoping you get many, many more of those little globes, those Oscar guys. And we want to thank you very, very much for coming down today, Charles. God
thanks
bless
for inviting
you.
me.
Happy New Year to you, and
You
that
too.
maybe that'll be the next year we'll bring you back again. For sure.
Okay, that'd be
Definitely. Thank
nice.
you, my brother. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
We want to thank you, and we'll see you next time. Oh man.
Okay.